So lung cancer and telemedicine consultation is based on telemedicine practice guidelines that were brought out by the government of India. Next slide. If you look at the Google Scholar and look at telemedicine and lung cancer, this was very surprising to me that there are more than 40,500 references about this. Next. In fact, I was so surprised that there is actually a journal of telemedicine and telecare. Not only that there is a journal, this issue about multidisciplinary lung cancer meetings was published in the year 2004. So this is like really a long time back. And what it concluded in this particular manuscript was that if you do discussion with a specialist thoracic surgeon who is not in your hospital, you can actually increase the annual resection rates by 30%. I'm sure this doesn't happen in our country, but if we do something like this, that would be great. So, Arvind, I'll start with you. Have you participated in telemedicine consultation, and do you think that something like this will benefit our patients?
Thank you for having me in this panel. For some reasons, I think there is a small mindset issue with the hospital to initiate formal teleconsultation services, but the discussions are on, and I'm sure that we should be able to get going. But on an informal basis, I've been actually, all of us, in fact, have been doing. And specifically coming to your question about multidisciplinary tumor boards, and I had a chance to meet a couple of UK surgeons earlier in the week as a part of a different panel. And I was made to understand that the tumor boards in the UK are largely driven by pulmonologists. So there was a time earlier wherein the pulmonologist would take to drive it and be leading it, and thoracic surgeons were not a part of those tumor boards. So subsequently, what they did is they incorporated the thoracic surgeons also as a member of the integral member of tumor boards, and resectability rates, operability rates. There are certain gray areas, so that improved, and hence over a period of years, that is why this data is reflected in terms of increased resectability rates for lung cancers.
And in your practice at Cancer Institute, irrespective of telemedicine, has the resectability for lung cancer improved over the years?
No, we have looked at our data, sir. Unfortunately, stages 1 and 2 are about 5%. Stages 3 around 30%, and the vast majority of them somehow, for some reasons, don't really come into the purview. So our resectability rates are barely in single digits, but I believe that we should be doing more towards getting these patients, at least the stage 3 ones. I think some of these patients we should be able to tease out and get them into the purview of resection. Stages 1 and 2, I believe there is hardly any difference of opinion. Most of them, unless and until they are medically inoperable for some reasons, but they come in the purview of surgery.
Right. Bhavesh, can I ask you the same question? In your practice for telemedicine consultation for lung cancer, what has been your experience?
Since almost now 1 year is pandemic, gradually more and more telemedicine consultation is increasing. The people, especially in Gujarat, we had more Rajasthan and Madhya Pradesh, and the people, if they are not able to come, more and more, there is an official website of our hospital, as well as there are so many other platforms where definitely I am also happy and the patient is also happy. We are doing telemedicine consultation as far as the lung cancer is concerned, and more people are doing the treatment. And now at least we had so many oral TKI also available, so so many patients are on oral TKI. So once it is diagnosed, they just came for diagnosis, and then the further treatment is possible at the remote place or at their hometown, rather than coming to my hospital.
Excellent. Next slide, please. So this is an example of evaluating the effectiveness of telemedicine in quality of life of patients with lung cancer. This was a systematic review and meta-analysis, and this included 8 clinical trials with 635 lung cancer patients. I think that's great. And those who participated in telemedicine group had a better quality of life, lower anxiety score, and lower depression score. So clearly there is a benefit of telemedicine. So Tanvir, in your patients, are they satisfied with the answers that you give on phone or on telemedicine for lung cancer?
Well, actually, our patient has not been satisfied by answer giving on phone or on telemedicine because we cannot physically examine the patient. So
Yes.
they are not usually satisfied by
Right.
giving medicine on phone or in telemedicine.
But
So
supposing you
mostly
have
follow-up,
seen, follow up. Please go ahead.
yeah, in follow-up patient, it is better, but in new patient, first time or teleconsultation is not better rather than directly with examining the patient or seeing the reports and vitals.
Right.
So in follow-up it is better, but new patient.
Agreed. Totally agreed.
Yeah.
Next slide, please. So this is a publication 2 years ago in 2019 about mobile health management platform-based pulmonary rehabilitation in non-small cell lung cancer, and this was a prospective clinical trial. So clearly, the value of telemedicine is well established, and not only that, people are starting to do prospective clinical trials on what is the exact benefit that we are getting in non-small cell lung cancer. Next slide. This is another example, European Respiratory Journal, Cancer in the Time of COVID-19, Expert Opinion on How to Adapt Current Practices for Lung Cancer and Mesothelioma. So this is also how technology is being leveraged in the presence of pandemic, as Bhavesh mentioned. Next slide. But there are a lot of misconceptions still among our colleagues about whether telemedicine can be used. If it is to be used, what can be done, what cannot be done. Next slide. And I think this is one of the reasons why we should also go back and read what is the government notification of 25th March about telemedicine practice guidelines. Next slide. Now, while the patient may have lung cancer or any other disease, there will always be different problems or common issues that happen during a telemedicine consultation. So I'm going to ask my panelists, what would they do in different circumstances? Now let us assume that a patient is insisting on a prescription. He says, COVID, I am very fearful of COVID. I don't want to come and meet you. I want a prescription. My CT scan shows that I have lung cancer. The liquid biopsy shows that it is EGFR mutated. You have not seen the patient, as Tanvir you mentioned. Now, if the patient comes and asks you for a prescription for this, what will you do?
So ideally, I'm not writing any anti-cancer drug without seeing the patient.
Excellent. Bhavesh, what is your opinion?
I will prescribe the in a proper format, and with a proper documentation also. And I will also explain the patient that we had done so and so date teleconsultation, and this is my prescription, and it should be in the PDF format. And I will save also the number of the patient as well as my talk also in my email ID also.
Right. Arvind, you might be getting some phone calls while you are with your family having dinner, whether it is related to prescription or a simple question. How do you deal with that?
The first and the important thing is whether it's an emergency or a non-emergency.
Right.
If it's an emergency, then of course I must thank you for the webinar and certificate course that you conducted, sir. And most of my knowledge is thanks to you and Kavina Creations for this. Whatever little I remember from that, I'm trying to share. I think that distinction is important. If it's an emergency, please ask them to go to the nearest treatment center. If it's a non-emergency, and I agree, I think as Dr. Bhavesh said, I think we must learn how to maintain electronic health records. I think it's very, very vital that we do it. You taught us a way out to give the first few names, the age, and the visits. And if it's all done in the way that you have described, then I think there should be absolutely no problems. But I agree, in this particular age, what happens is telemedicine has actually stretched the day of this of the clinicians and oncologists. So they must sort of try to sort of create that time to sort of document it and maintain the EHR in a very, very proper manner. And that's going to be a real challenge, and that may lead to a lot of burnouts also because of stretched clinical hours for clinicians. And that is something that we have to safeguard.
So in this particular instance, it is not mandatory for the doctor to respond immediately. So if I get a call when I'm busy, whether it is an emergency or a social function, I would say, I will provide you an appointment for a telemedicine consultation and we will go. So nobody, no patient can force us to give a reply on the spot at any time of the day or the night. So if you want to maintain quality of life, you should not stretch your working hours as you mentioned. Has Dr. JP Agarwal joined? Not yet. Okay. Next slide, please. What if a neighbor calls you for the first time on your landline and says, my 72-year-old father has mild cough and fever. Otherwise, he is quite well. Should I give him Combiflam? Now, these are the three options that I have written down. And Arvind, since I can see you on the screen, I'll start with you again. What would you do in such a patient?
We'll have to be slightly wary about some of these things, and I think that's what it all depends on what prior experience you have been.
Yes.
But I feel that you'll have to sort of be, although the common instinct is to sort of say that you do this, but I would be a little circumspect, and I would sort of always put it with a rider that you
Right.
should sort of check your history of allergies or consult your physician. So I would never sort of straight away give a yes or no answer to that patient.
Perfect. Bhavesh, what would you do in this circumstance?
I will definitely ask the patient to go to any emergency department of the hospital rather than prescribing directly having a mild cough and fever, a Combiflam.
So this is your neighbor. He is going to hound you, and you want to maintain a relationship with him. So what will you do in that situation?
So that's the way, like a neighbor, to what's your tone to the patients, and what's the way that you have to identify for your safety also.
Correct.
Because then once the problem solved, and if anything happens, the same neighbor behaves differently to you once the problem has been solved or once any allergic reaction happens.
Very right, very right. Tanvir, what would you do?
Yes, number one option will be better for us also.
Right. So based on the telemedicine practice guideline, we should never prescribe like this. Okay. At the same time, if let us say instead of a neighbor, this is a person that I know who is living 300 kilometers away and is not near a healthcare facility, then the wording that I use about advising Combiflam is very important. I would not say you take Combiflam. I would say that in these circumstances, if Combiflam is given, 70% patients respond. Now, the distinction between the words that I'm using is between prescribing and giving general advice. So, if a person at the other end is smart, he will understand what I'm trying to say and will buy the Combiflam and give it. At the same time, as far as telemedicine practice guidelines are concerned, I have not prescribed anything. So, nobody can find faults with me. So, please remember, whether you're sending a WhatsApp or you're sending a SMS, writing an email, or talking on the phone, the wording that we use is very important to save ourselves, at the same time providing some benefit to the patient at the other end. Next slide. Your regular patient is calling you on the landline. You were last examined by you 10 days ago in your clinic. You recall that his diagnosis of comorbidities is diabetes mellitus and hypertension. Earlier, you have prescribed atenolol and metformin for him. He wants prescription so he can purchase the same medicine again. Bhavesh, what would you do? And will you send him the prescription?
Definitely, this is my regular patient, and already atenolol and metformin, these are the very commonest drug for diabetes and hypertension. So I will reconfirm, I will ask that give my old prescription, and I will again write down another only for some 5 days or 10 days rather than 1 month, 3 months. Most of the time they are asking for long duration, that can you prescribe for 3 months, can you prescribe for more than duration. Then I said no, I will prescribe only for some fixed duration, and this is because the pandemic or because of some circumstances. You can send some other your colleague or relative to come to the clinic tomorrow morning at so and so time. and I will prescribe. But at present, I am prescribing you as you are my regular patient and for some fixed days.
Perfect. This is really a very appropriate, and you have taken care of all the factors that are required for a telemedicine consultation. Next slide. Now, the same patient with diabetes and hypertension calls you back after 1 week. Now his blood pressure is 140/90 since last 5 days, and his fasting blood sugar has increased to 250. Earlier you had prescribed some drugs. Now you want to add different drugs for the same disease. So for diabetes you want to add metformin, and you want to, for hypertension you want to add losartan. You have seen the patient 10 plus 7, that is almost 2.5 weeks ago. Now can you prescribe losartan and metformin to this patient? Bhavesh, I'll start with you first.
Again, no, answer is very clear. To change the medicine with this only right report like fasting blood sugar and blood pressure, I will definitely ask them to come to my clinic rather than just prescribing on telemedicine.
Okay. Tanvir, what would you do?
It's better to visit the patient
Alright.
to at least nearest doctor or check the BP and then add another drug.
Arvind, what is your opinion?
I agree. I think it is very important to have a formal consultation, and whenever you're in doubt, in some circumstances, it's always preferable to ask for an inpatient consultation, and that's exactly what I do. Of course, diabetes and hypertension may not be my domain of expertise, so that is also one of the reasons. So if I would sort of ask them, like, that you can meet your general physician if you're not confident, or preferable, ask them to come for an inpatient consultation.
Right. So you will be happy to know that the telemedicine practice guidelines allows us to do this, and the criteria are as follows. One is that you have previously seen the patient face to face and examined. Second is that initial examination was in the last 3 months, less than 3 months. Third is that it is for the same disease for which you have already prescribed earlier. In these circumstances, adding another medicine, another type of medicine for the same disease, for the same patient that you have physically examined in less than 3 months, telemedicine practice guidelines allows us to do that. So we should not be worried about doing it. Next slide, please. 10 days later, the same patient with diabetes and hypertension calls on the landline. He says he has sprained his ankle. It is slightly swollen and painful while walking. He is requesting for urgent pain relief because he is not responding to self-medication with Combiflam. Can you prescribe tramadol to this patient? Arvind, let's start with you.
Again, we'll have to sort of, we'll have to give the broader advice. I think there is a suspicion that it could be a fracture, so we will tell them that the needs more evaluation, and tramadol, of course, is a WHO class 2 agent. So we will have to sort of be a little circumspect about that. But I would possibly tell him that there is a likelihood of fracture is there, so preferable to sort of have a inpatient consultation.
Perfect. So the sprained ankle could be a fracture. This could be a medical emergency. You don't know whether some circulation is compromised somewhere, artery is compressed or not. So patient should be asked to go to the nearest medical center. As far as tramadol is concerned, even though it is in the Schedule H, telemedicine practice guidelines actually allows us to prescribe tramadol, but I would definitely not prescribe in this particular case. Next slide. 3 hours later, the same patient calls on the landline. He's shouting in pain, says tramadol did not help him and wants something stronger to kill the patient, the pain for immediate relief, not the patient. What will you prescribe to this patient? Arvind, I'll start with you, then Bhavesh and Tanvir.
I think I will sort of tell that this is a sort of an emergency-like situation. Correct. I think, as you said, that it could be because of claudication pain or because of any other reason. So I would tell him that preferable to go to a nearest center to sort of have this pain evaluated.
Excellent. Bhavesh, what would you do?
Same thing as Dr. Arvind. This is a different scenario, and this is really as patient shouting in pain, and the word used is to kill the pain for immediate relief. Is always better to explain him the situation and tell to come down to nearby hospital.
Perfect. Tanvir, what would you do?
It's better to tell the patient to go to nearest emergency center.
Right. Yeah, JP Agarwal joined? I don't think he has joined. He's
Yes,
there.
sir, he is joined, sir.
Wonderful, JP.
So,
I think the connection is weak or I can't hear him.
pain should be taken care, sir. That is,
Yes.
should be the first priority.
Right. So when you take care of the pain, I don't know whether you were there when I was making my comments. We can ask the patient to take care of the pain without prescribing a medicine. And the wording that we use is very important. So instead of saying you take Combiflam or you take Tramadol, we should say that in 70% of instances with such circumstances, patients do benefit from so and so medicine. That means we are giving general advice, we are not giving prescribing, and that is what is very important for me.